So let's move on to bands and talk about where bands, because bands kind of made their way into the scene. I mean, they've been around a long time. Tubing has been around forever, but we started to see the use of like these super bands or the thicker bands. I mean, they go everything from like a 1/4 inch up to like 3 inches, depending on what resistance profile you're looking for. So I think everybody can benefit by band or from bands, but not every gym or every facility or every garage gym out there has accessibility to them. Here's the thing that I like about bands before I turn it over to you guys. Very inexpensive, very easy to get your hands on. It's a quick, trip down to your local equipment shop, like your homegrown or small business. That's the first place you should be going because it's America. Second place I guess you could go is that other place, starts with an A, ends with an N, on the internet, where you could order some of those pretty quick and get them to your house. But I like them because they're inexpensive and they can be very effective. Last part, where I say they're fairly non-intimidating once you know how to use them, right? And I think that's where the question now becomes is like, where are they most appropriately used, CC? Like, where do you fit those into the workout for sort of the newbie? And if you're that person that really understands bands, how do you explain it to the newbie to where they can kind of get it and benefit by them?
Oh, for the newbie, like you said, that there's various thicknesses and resistance profiles. So for a newbie, they can start with a thinner band or a less resistance profile and use it for a warm up, or stand on it and put it around the shoulders and try doing some squatting or doing some rows because it's so versatile. Attaching it at some fixed point, whether it's on the floor, close to the floor, or shoulder height. Practice pulling because they'll still get the resistance factor through a range of motion for whatever body part they're using. As far as for myself, I've used the super bands for a warm up. Warming up my muscles and my joints before going to pick up a barbell or a dumbbell or something like that. As far as the thicker bands, the thing that we do here the most with them is pull-ups.
Exactly.
To give somebody some assistance so you can either stand in it or you can kneel in it. That's going to change the resistance profile of whichever band that you choose by just, changing of the body lever with the pull. And you're able to get somebody in an actual pull-up position. Because when you do a pull-up, you have to engage, your glutes and your abs and, your upper body instead of just kneeling on an assisted machine, right? That's going to be supporting your body weight to help you pull up. So I know some of our team members here, they use it a variety of different ways as far as, Jeff, I'm sure will elaborate on this, but, with deadlifting and RDLing and those types of things and bench pressing, I've seen him use it with some of our other clients as far as that may have challenges with movement patterns because of injuries or, whatever might be going on with them. So they're just really versatile, and you can't really get hurt with them.
Unless one snaps.
Exactly.
And that happens. So that is one thing you need to be, and you should advise anybody, but particularly a newbie to it, is whenever they're using a band, is to make sure they've got one that's got good integrity. Exactly. Two things I want to add before I hand it over to Jeff here. First off, I want to go back to the pull-up thing, and I also want to talk about the term you use, resistance profile. And I'm going to go backwards and frontwards. So resistance profile, for those of you listening or trying to explain it to somebody, think about this. You have a rubber band in your hand and you pull it apart, right? You start at the beginning and that resistance is low, right? But as it begins to stretch, the resistance gets higher. So effectively, if I'm starting in my start position, and the example I would use would be like, say, a chest press. So I have the tubing or the band anchored to the wall behind me, and I've got my hands and handles. I'm facing away from my anchor, and I've got those things in my hand. I'm pressing through my arms, like as in a chest press or a bench press, out in front of me. At the beginning of that movement, there's very little resistance. That's when I'm at, and at the beginning of the movement, I would be in my bottom position. So my elbows are in, arms would be like, say, 90 degrees off my shoulders. But as I start to extend, that resistance profile increases. That is, I feel more resistance because now the band is going on stretch as I'm moving into my strongest position, my more stable position. So it can be a really great place to start to warm up, as you mentioned, or build strength at the end ranges, right? But also learn how to take on load at the weaker ranges of motion. So that's the first thing with resistance profile, and that moves into the pull-up piece, right? And the pull-up being, you won't see anybody feel more empowered in the gym than when they can do a pull-up. Like when they get up there on that bar, they do a pull-up for the very first time. It's like, it's high-fiving. They're telling everybody, I did a pull-up today. And it is not the same as sitting down on a machine and doing a pull down. It is a completely different muscle recruitment pattern on top of you are doing you're pulling your body through space to a fixed point versus pulling a bar to this is attached to a cable to your body. There's two different things there. We don't have to dig into that. But my point being is, like, when you have this rubber band on there, it helps you get there. And if you understand that resistance profile, you would get, like, the thicker the band, the more help I'm going to get. So Jeff, maybe just turning that over real quick to you with regard to the resistance profiles where you might implement these bands in the program for somebody.
So for the bands, like for me, when I'm looking at bands and adding to strength profile, like where am I weakest in my lift? And I'm going to add the band to that. So you're talking about deadlifts. When we start driving through leg drive from the floor and we start getting into really hip extension, as the band extends through my top lockout where I'm going to be the weakest, I can literally have a lower load. I can have bands on the side to where I lift off the ground. It's light. And when I get to my lockout, it gets to a full extension of contraction from the bands, right? So I'm adding 80 pounds of tension through my lockout. But as I get down through the extension through my lower portion, where I would have a lot of breakdown, right?
Begins to unload it a bit.
Exactly, right? And I'm really going through that extension period where I'm eccentrically loading, right? Creating a lot of damage. I can kind of bypass that and work through the concentric with the bands, right? So that's one way that I put them. And you have to look at the strength profile of an exercise and understand where this is going to be. And you can also reverse it as well. So for instance, if I'm doing squats, I can stand up with the band wrapped around the bottom of the rack to the bar and come up through concentric.
So it's pulling you up, right?
Or I can rack the band to the top around. So as I get in my concentric, it's literally pulling the bar off of me. And as I stand up, the weight's lighter. So I could use more weight coming in through the eccentric, getting a little bit of help at the bottom and standing up through more of a grinding set. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, I think so. When we see people, so if you're a new person, you're walking, you see people doing what looks to be a very fancy exercise. By the way, none of them are fancy. They're all the same exercises. People are just adding a little bit of mustard to them, right? And the bands are one of those things. And it is a little bit more complex, but if you use them in their simplest form and you understand them at the base level, you can maybe start to put together the pieces of how to implement these into your program.